The flight attendant's voice rang out loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm going to ask you one last time. Move to the back of the plane, or I will call security. Her words sliced through the cabin, laced with sharp condescension. Naomi Williams, a composed black woman, met the demand with a simple, even tone. I've already told you I'm not moving. Her voice, calm and almost soothing, carried an undeniable strength. Though humiliated in front of everyone, no one could have predicted what would happen next when the woman they assumed was powerless suddenly revealed who she truly was. The plane gleamed under the afternoon sun, its sleek design promising a luxurious journey for its passengers. Inside, opulence reigned, plush leather seats, gleaming gold accents, and an aura of exclusivity made every traveler feel like royalty. Passengers moved with ease, their expensive luggage rolling behind them as they were ushered toward the private jet parked on the tarmac. Soon they settled into their spots, some scrolling through their devices, others sipping champagne offered by the attentive flight crew. Amid the refined atmosphere was Naomi Williams, a woman in her late 30s dressed in a tailored navy blazer and matching slacks. Naomi exuded understated elegance, moving with quiet confidence without ever seeking the spotlight. Today, however, her journey was far from ordinary. It was a mission to oversee her expanding empire. Though those on board had yet to learn her true identity, she preferred to remain incognito for the time being. Standing near the entrance was Madison Reed, the lead flight attendant in her early 40s. Her uniform was crisp and perfectly tailored, and her sharp features exuded a sense of control. Greeting passengers one by one, her smile was warm for some and noticeably colder for others. Madison prided herself on maintaining order aboard the flight, a standard that, in her eyes, depended heavily on appearances and behavior. As she welcomed Naomi, her tone shifted abruptly from polite to curt. Welcome aboard. The warmth was all but absent. Nearby, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, a seasoned couple in their 60s, settled in with the ease of habitual travelers. Mrs. Thompson clutched a small knitting bag, her fingers twitching with the anticipation of beginning her craft work, while Mr. Thompson, holding a folded newspaper, observed the scene with mild curiosity. Madison's smile brightened for them. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Lovely to have you with us again. As Naomi glanced over her shoulder, she noticed a stark difference in tone directed at her. Her expression remained calm, her eyes reflecting an awareness of the unspoken dynamics at play. After ensuring everything was in order by checking on the Thompsons with a bright smile, Madison's demeanor shifted again when she passed Naomi. Glancing at Naomi's neatly placed bag, Madison's lips pressed into a thin line. She offered no courtesy or warmth, only a brisk, silent dismissal. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone's attitude shifts simply based on appearances? The murmuring passengers wondered aloud, their curiosity mingling with disapproval. Some nudged each other, whispering, while a nosy socialite, Vanessa, leaned in for a better view. Meanwhile, a friendly businessman, Brandon, frowned slightly at Madison's tone, silently questioning the unfolding scene. Naomi's calm gaze never wavered. As Madison's irritation grew, she approached Naomi with quick, purposeful strides. Excuse me, ma'am, she said in a tone that was polite on the surface, but dripping with condescension. I think you're in the wrong section. Naomi looked up, her expression remaining serene as she replied, I believe this is my seat. Madison's smile never faltered, though her tone grew sharper. I don't think so. This section is reserved for our elite passengers. Whispers and sideways glances spread among the onlookers. A few passengers murmured questions. Why didn't Naomi just move? Others speculated that she was trying to sneak in for a free upgrade. Crossing her arms, Madison's voice boomed so everyone could hear. If you don't move to the back of the plane, I will call security. Naomi tilted her head slightly, her calm expression unwavering. Call whoever you need to, she said simply, but I'm not moving. Gasps rippled among the passengers. Vanessa, the nosy socialite, whispered in alarm, and Brandon leaned forward, frowning. At that moment, Madison's frustration reached a fever pitch. She turned to the junior flight attendant, Grace, who was watching nervously. "Grace, escort her to the back," Madison ordered. Grace hesitated, glancing between Naomi and Madison. She wanted to speak up. After all, Naomi had suggested that Madison should verify the passenger list, but Madison's sharp glare silenced her. Reluctantly, Grace nodded and stepped forward. Naomi shifted slightly in her seat, her calm demeanor unbroken. "You might want to think carefully about what you're doing," she remarked softly. The words carried more weight than Madison realized. Scoffing, Madison waved off the warning. "I know exactly what I'm doing," she snapped. "Now get up." The whispers among passengers swelled into a tense murmur. Some questioned, "What would you do if someone treated you like this on a flight?" Others recorded every moment on their phones. As the confrontation escalated, Naomi continued to respond with quiet defiance. "You shouldn't make assumptions about people," she said softly, her steady gaze fixed on Madison. Madison's smirk widened as she continued. "And you shouldn't be in seats you didn't pay for." Rallying support as if addressing a crowd, she declared, "We have rules for a reason. Some people just don't respect them." Yet Naomi remained silent, her composure the only testament to her inner strength. Grace, who had been hovering near the passenger list clipped near the cockpit door, hesitated again. Her fingers trembled as she scanned the names, hoping to find something that might help Naomi. But before she could speak, Madison snapped, "Grace, what are you doing?" In a quiet voice barely above a whisper, Grace replied, "I was just checking." Madison's tone grew cutting. "You don't need to get involved." Grace stepped back, her face flushing with embarrassment and torn between her conscience and the fear of losing her job. The tension mounted further when a kindly-looking man across the aisle leaned forward, his eyes full of concern. In a gentle tone, Brandon asked, "Excuse me, is everything all right?" Naomi's face softened as she replied, "I'm fine, thank you," her voice steady and grateful for the small act of kindness. Yet Madison interjected sharply, "Sir, I'd appreciate it if you didn't encourage a disturbance." Brandon frowned calmly. "You're the one causing a scene," he countered. Madison's face flushed with anger as she directed her gaze back at Naomi. "I've had enough of this," she snapped. "Either you move or I'll have you escorted off this plane." Naomi met her gaze without a hint of fear. "You can try," she said softly. Madison, her voice trembling with anger, leaned in even closer. "Why won't you just admit you're in the wrong and stop wasting everyone's time?" Naomi's silence only fueled Madison's fury. Finally, after a drawn-out standoff, Madison's voice rose again. "I'm going to ask you one last time. Move to the back of the plane, or I will call security." The sharp edge of her tone brooked no argument. In a hushed murmur, Vanessa whispered to her companion, "Looks like she's trying to sneak in for a free ride." Madison seized the comment, her smirk returning as she announced to the others, "That's exactly what it looks like." But Naomi did not respond to the insults or the growing murmurs around her. Instead, she maintained her quiet defiance, her gaze locking steadily on Madison. Then, in a moment that left everyone breathless, Madison's irritation exploded. Unable to contain her anger any longer, she raised her hand and, with a sound that echoed like a thunderclap through the cabin, slapped Naomi across the face. Gasps and murmurs of shock burst forth from the passengers. Brandon's expression mixed disbelief with anger, while Grace covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Even Vanessa, the ever-curious socialite, seemed taken aback. After the slap, Naomi slowly straightened her hand, now resting calmly in her lap, her expression as composed as ever. The silence in the cabin was palpable. Finally, Naomi spoke in a quiet yet cutting tone. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." Her words, gentle but lethal in their precision, hung in the air. "I've been patient with you, but your behavior has crossed the line." In response, Madison's voice, now shaky with anger, retorted, "You're the one who's been disruptive since you got on this plane." Unflinching, Naomi simply stated, "All I asked was to be treated with the same respect as every other passenger. If that's too much to ask, then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong here." With that, a heavy silence settled over the cabin as Madison's frustration boiled over. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "I've been more than patient with you. Maybe now you'll understand that actions have consequences." Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're right. Actions do have consequences, and you're about to find out just how true that is." For a moment, Madison faltered. Something in Naomi's tone sent a chill down her spine, but she quickly masked her unease, dismissing the warning with a derisive, "I'm not afraid of your empty threats." Her voice dripped with contempt as she replied, "You're the one who will regret this, not me." As onlookers recorded every moment and exchanged uneasy glances, Grace, the younger flight attendant, watched with a mix of horror and a growing resolve. Observing the unfolding drama, she discreetly retreated and with trembling fingers, dialed a number on her phone. When her call connected, her voice was hushed but resolute. "It's Grace. We have a situation on the plane." She returned to her post, her face a portrait of worry and determination, while Madison, oblivious to the call, continued to pace, her frustration simmering. The tension in the cabin was electric. Passengers watched, unsure whether to intervene or simply record the spectacle. A concerned passenger leaned toward Naomi and whispered, "Are you okay?" Naomi offered a small, reassuring smile and replied softly, "I'm fine." But the unspoken question remained. How far would this go? Minutes later, as Naomi shifted in her seat attempting to get comfortable, an incident unfolded that shattered the fragile calm. As Madison returned with a tray of sparkling water, her sharp eyes caught the slight movement of Naomi stretching her leg into the aisle. Instead of a polite reminder, Madison deliberately altered her path. Her foot struck Naomi's leg, causing the tray to tilt and sending glasses tumbling forward. Water splashed across Naomi's lap and the floor. Madison gasped theatrically, her voice rising as she admonished, "Watch where you're putting your legs. You've caused a mess." Startled yet remarkably composed, Naomi brushed the water from her trousers. "You walked into my leg," she stated calmly. "I only asked to be treated with the same respect as everyone else." The quiet rebuke hung in the air, a powerful statement that cut through the chaos. For a split second, Madison's face flushed with uncontrollable anger as she stepped closer. "You think you can talk to me like that?" she hissed before. In a shocking moment, her hand came down with force in a resounding slap that left the cabin in stunned silence. The sound echoed like a thunderclap, and the reaction was immediate. Brandon's face registered disbelief and anger. Grace's hands flew to her mouth in horror, while Vanessa's previous smirk gave way to an uneasy frown. Yet Naomi simply straightened in her seat, her eyes reflecting a deep, unyielding resolve. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," she said quietly. "I have been patient, but your behavior has crossed the line." Madison's anger, now a boiling mix of humiliation and rage, flared as she accused, "You're the one making a scene." Brandon, ever calm, interjected, "You're the one causing this disturbance." Emboldened by Naomi's silent strength, the passengers began to shift. Phones were raised and whispers turned into murmurs of support. Then the turning point arrived. The cabin's atmosphere shifted like the sudden calm after a storm. Without warning, the pilot stepped out from the cockpit. His face was pale, his expression strained, as he strode directly toward Madison. "You need to step aside," he declared firmly, his voice laced with discomfort and authority. Madison's irritation met a sudden wall of disbelief. "Excuse me," she protested, crossing her arms. "Why would I need to step aside? I'm handling this." The pilot's gaze moved to Naomi and then back to Madison. "I just received a call from management. The owner of this plane is on board. She's Miss Williams," he said plainly, the words crashing over the cabin like a thunderclap. A collective gasp erupted among the passengers. The nosy socialite, Vanessa, leaned forward in shock. "She owns the plane?" she whispered in disbelief. Brandon nodded knowingly, his expression calm yet affirming, as he muttered, I had a feeling. Relief washed over Grace as the truth settled in. Naomi wasn't just another passenger. In fact, she was far more powerful than anyone had realized. Madison stared at the pilot, her face losing its typical sharpness. That can't be true, she stammered, voice faltering. There must be some mistake. But as tension built, the plane's engines hummed steadily, and the silent judgment from the other passengers was unmistakable. Moments later, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the tarmac. Its doors opened, and two sharply dressed assistants emerged, their movements brisk and purposeful. They ascended the plane's steps with quiet authority. Miss Williams, one of them said warmly, everything is ready for your review. Do you need anything before we proceed? Gasps rippled through the cabin. Madison's face drained of color as the reality set in. Miss Williams? She whispered, barely audible. The assistants paid her no heed, their focus entirely on Naomi. Rising slowly, Naomi adjusted her blazer, her calm demeanor radiating a quiet, undeniable power. With a steady and commanding voice, she addressed the room. I'm Naomi Williams. I am the owner of this plane, and I am also the owner of this airline. Madison's confident, condescending stance evaporated in an instant, replaced by panic and dread. Naomi's gaze swept across the cabin before settling on Madison. Madison, your behavior today has been nothing short of disgraceful. You have humiliated a passenger, mistreated someone based solely on assumptions, and tarnished the reputation of this airline. For a brief moment, Madison stammered, I didn't know. But Naomi swiftly silenced her. You didn't know because you never bothered to treat me with the respect that every passenger deserves. Your assumptions, driven by prejudice, have escalated a situation that could have been resolved with basic decency. The murmurs of agreement from the passengers grew louder as Mr. and Mrs. Thompson exchanged nods of approval. Naomi's voice remained steady as she continued. Actions have consequences, and you, Madison, are about to find out how true that is. Searching desperately for support, Madison's eyes darted around the cabin, but no one came to her defense. With measured steps, Naomi advanced, her tone unwavering. While you were busy judging me, you failed to do your duty, which is to treat every passenger with respect, regardless of who they are or what you assume about them. The tension was unbearable. In a final act of authority, Naomi gestured toward the pilot. I want this addressed immediately, and I want to ensure that this never happens again. The pilot, his expression professional yet resolute, nodded. Facing inevitable consequences, Madison took a hesitant step back, her mind whirling with panic and regret as she moved toward the exit. But before she could escape, the pilot intercepted her. You're not going anywhere, he said firmly. Madison, your actions today have proven that you are unfit for your position. Effective immediately, you are fired, the pilot declared, his tone final. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Madison's face crumpled and tears streamed down her cheeks as she tried desperately to protest. Please, Miss Williams, I'm sorry. Naomi's expression remained impassive. Your apology means nothing without accountability, she replied softly. You made your choices and now you'll face the consequences. In that moment, two uniformed officers boarded the plane. One officer approached Madison respectfully. We received your report. Are you pressing charges? Naomi's eyes remained steady as she answered, yes, this individual assaulted me in front of multiple witnesses. I expect her to be held accountable. Madison's protest turned desperate, but an officer produced handcuffs. Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault, he said matter-of-factly, warning, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Breathing quickly, Madison's eyes darted to Vanessa, who sat still, and then to Grace, whose hands trembled as she clutched the passenger list. The once dominant flight attendant now stood defeated, a stark contrast to the powerful figure before her. As the officers led her away, the cabin was filled with a mixture of relief and somber reflection. After all the commotion, Naomi turned to the passengers, her voice calm and sincere. I apologize for what you had to witness today. This is not the standard of service I expect on my planes. Moving forward, we will ensure that every passenger is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. Applause slowly broke out among the passengers. Mr. Thompson even set aside his newspaper with an approving nod, and Mrs. Thompson clapped politely. Turning to Grace, whose quiet professionalism throughout the ordeal had not gone unnoticed, Naomi said softly, "Thank you for stepping up when it mattered. You will be hearing from my office about a promotion." Grace's eyes widened with gratitude as she managed a quiet, "Thank you, Miss Williams." With a brief smile, Naomi stepped toward the exit, her assistant close behind as they prepared for the next meeting. Later, in a televised interview set in a sleek studio, Naomi's demeanor was as poised as ever. The interviewer leaned forward, captivated by her presence. "Miss Williams, your story has gone viral. Millions have seen how you handled this situation. What message do you have for the world?" Naomi's steady gaze met the camera as she replied, "Respect is a right, not a privilege. Everyone deserves dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from. True leadership is about setting a standard and ensuring it is upheld." The interviewer, visibly moved, asked, "What would you say to those who face similar challenges but do not have a platform?" Naomi's expression softened slightly. "Strength comes from within. Even when you feel invisible, remember your worth. You don't need a title or wealth to demand respect. You simply need to stand firm in who you are." A few weeks later, Naomi boarded another flight. A different crew greeted her, this time with genuine warmth. The lead flight attendant welcomed her with a sincere smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Williams. It's an honor to have you." Naomi returned the smile as she settled into her seat, the atmosphere lighter and the service impeccable. As she gazed out the window, watching the runway blur into the sky, a deep sense of peace washed over her. The events of that day had not only changed the lives of those aboard, but had sparked a movement. In that final quiet moment, as the endless horizon framed a future filled with promise, Naomi knew that sometimes the most powerful victories were not about winning an argument. They were about inspiring change. With each decision, every policy, and every act of leadership, she was shaping a future where respect and kindness were the standard, not the exception. And so, as the plane climbed higher into the clouds, Naomi Williams sat at the helm of her vision, a quiet triumph shining in her eyes. Victory that no turbulence could ever shake. In a public statement released shortly after, Naomi spoke directly to the world. Luxury isn't about appearances. It's about the experience we create for everyone. True success is measured not by what you can afford, but by how you treat others. The statement sparked conversations across social media, with hashtags like respect above all and #Naomi's vision trending for days, an inspiration to millions. If you believe every person deserves respect regardless of appearance or background, remember Naomi's story. Stand up for what's right, because sometimes one moment of courage can inspire change that ripples far beyond a single flight.